Right, is Uber and Bolt still worth doing in 2023? Let's find out. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you're flirting with the idea of maybe driving for Bolt or Uber in the UK, London in particular, and you want to know, is it still worth doing in 2023? Well, if so, then this will be the video for you, because I'm going to tell you guys what it actually is like to work for these companies, and whether it's worth your time and investment. I'm also going to be giving you guys a couple of tips that's going to actually help you guys earn a bit more. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be sharing a little secret as well that a lot of people don't know about Bolt and Uber. Like, very little drivers know this about Bolt and Uber. So watch the video to the end, because I will be telling you that secret. Now, here's some of the best advice I can give anyone who's actually thinking of driving for a living. And I made a video, my previous video, a lot of people was agreeing with what I was saying essentially, which is, it is a dying industry if you're thinking of working for Bolt and Uber. I say this because the prices have changed drastically, and they've not changed in favor of the drivers, they've changed in favor of the riders. Because before, Uber and Bolt, let's face it, Bolt just follow whatever Uber does. So if Uber comes out with this new strategy and system, Bolt just seem to follow it, because that's all they know how to do. But anyway, the price card on Uber used to be, they'll pay you for every mile you drive and every minute you drive. But they've got rid of that. They've now decided that the trips are just all fixed. So, when a trip comes in for the drivers, you'll see, like, let's say £10, £12, and that's what you're gonna get no matter what happens on your journey, right? It's fixed now. Where before, the driver had the option of taking whatever route he wanted, and Uber paid you for every mile you covered and every minute you drove. Now it's not like that. So as a result, drivers are now making way less money than they were making 4 or 5 years ago, which ultimately has resulted into drivers now no longer favoring the longer journeys. Like, we're not doing these longer journeys anymore, and we're not going into London anymore. And what you find now, drivers only do short journeys now. Because why? Because it's short, it's quick to do, and you'll get your little £4.50 from it, and you could just do lots of those, rather than doing one long journey into London that takes you about an hour to do. You only get paid £20 for it, and now you're stuck in traffic, and it's just not worth it anymore. A lot of questions I get asked as well is, what's better, Bolt or Uber? I will honestly tell you this. You can't even compare the two. Bolt is for me, but I think Bolt, the people who use Bolt are drivers and riders who've been banned from Uber. That's just a fact, because if you've got Uber there, you really don't need Bolt. That's just the truth, because there's for a driver driving on Bolt, there isn't enough requests. You could sometimes wait 10 to 20 minutes for a single fare. There just isn't enough requests, where in comparison to Uber during peak hours, you get a trip almost every 2-3 minutes, because it's just that busy. So I would say, yeah, work with Uber, prioritize Uber rather than Bolt. Of course, sign up to all the apps and do what some of the drivers do, which is, again, I don't encourage this at all, to have multiple apps running at the same time. It's one of the dumbest things you can do, because all you're going to do is you're going to be driving on one app, and then eventually you get a trip that's better on the other app, and then you cancel, and now you're driving with the other app, and then a better trip comes, you cancel, and it's not a great way to work. You just waste everyone's time, right? So I wouldn't recommend that. I would say always stick with one app, and for me it would be Uber. So just run the Uber app and go with that, because one, the algorithm is a lot better as well. The app is a lot smoother. Anyone that's driven for Bolt will tell you, man, the Bolt app is terrible. Constantly crashes, it's super slow. You do a trip, and for some strange reason, your earnings show hours later. It's not, it's not fit for purpose, in my opinion. So this is why I'd say just stick with Uber. Now, so the main question is Uber and Bolt still worth doing in 2023 as either, full-time or part-time? Now, for me personally, I would say no, it's not. Simply because I've seen what we used to earn 4 or 5 years ago to what we're earning now. It's just not worth the same. 40, 50-hour work now wouldn't even get you £1,000, where before you could easily make £1,000 doing just 40 to 50 hours. Easily. Now you do the same hours, you just don't generate the same amount of money because Uber has just messed up the algorithm and the price card so much to a point drivers are not making money anymore. So for me personally, I would say, listen, if you want to drive for a living, avoid Bolt and Uber. What you need to be doing is sign up to your local taxi companies, because trust me, these people pay you way more money, they take less commission, and it's less stressful, and you deal with better clients. I've said this multiple times. I'm based in Surrey, so there's a company I work with, they just pay me way better than Uber, so I have no need for Uber, but I am still signed up with Uber, right? I use Uber occasionally. I use it to my convenience. Because I've noticed in the previous video, a lot of people are saying, well, if it's not worth doing, why are you still signed up with Uber? Why are you still with Uber? I have them as a backup plan. So let me tell you this. I went from doing 25 trips a day with Uber to now I do about 5 trips a week with Uber. Do you understand? So I still use Uber, but I don't use it religiously in the same manner in which I used to use them. So I wouldn't even say I'll do it part-time. I do about 5 trips a week in comparison to 25 trips a day that I used to do with them. So for me, I say sign up with your local taxi company. They'll pay you 10 times more, man. They'll pay you way better than Uber and Bolt would pay you. So it doesn't matter where you live, you can live in Surrey, Kent, Sussex. What you will find is every area has a local taxi. So it may be Station's car, it may be this, that. Contact them, ask them, do you need any drivers? Because I promise you, 8 out of 10 times I'll be like, yes, we're starving for drivers. We desperately need drivers. Ask them, what commission do you take? And ask them, can you guarantee me £1,000 a week? Ask them that, they will tell you the truth. And, in my opinion, you've got nothing to lose. Try it out, then try Uber, and then compare the difference and just go from there. Now, this is one of the most vital tip I can give to anyone actually trying to start with Uber and Bolt. Don't do what most idiots do, which is go out there and splash money on a brand new car. I'm seeing people invest 30, 40, 50,000 pound cars to drive for Uber and Bolt. It's just bonkers, because you do understand you're investing that kind of money just so you can earn potentially 15 to 20 pounds an hour. It doesn't make sense. And all you're going to be doing is running the car down to the ground. So if you are someone that's thinking of starting, right, what you do is go hire a car for a month or two. I can't recommend this enough. Go and hire a car for a month or two and then do the job. And then you do your maths, you do your maths. That will tell you if the job is worth it. And if it is worth it, then of course go out there and invest on a 30 to 40,000 pound car like most idiots do. Like, I'm in a Tesla, but I didn't buy this Tesla to do Uber. There's a difference. The people I drive for is pretty much high-end passengers, so they do require a nice car. I can't just turn up in a Prius and expect them to be paying me £70 for me to take them to the airport. It doesn't work that way, right? Example of why I say avoid working for Uber and just work for your local taxi, right? I've just done an airport trip, right? I went from Guildford to Gatwick, North Terminal. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it shows here, right? This trip took me less than an hour to do, and I got paid £76 for that journey. On Uber, do you know how much Guildford to Gatwick is? It's going to be like £35 or less, right? So I've pretty much made double that with these people, and this is what I'm talking about. It's not worth it. £76, I went Guildford to Gatwick. With Uber, you'll be lucky to get 30 to 35 pounds. You'll be very lucky. So this is why I say, like, you have to avoid them people, man. They're not going to pay you well. You know, here's a fun fact. In the last 4 years, Uber have lost nearly 40% of their drivers. You know, 40%. Why? Because a lot of drivers have realized, look, this is not worth doing. It's not. So they've gone elsewhere. I don't know if they've packed it in and they're doing other jobs, or they're just driving for local companies. But what I do know is they're not driving for Uber anymore. Every day the numbers are getting less and less and less. So that would be a clear indication that Uber are heading towards the wrong direction. And for me, it's no longer worth it to do Uber full time. It just isn't. Part time or maybe on the side, yes, perhaps. But full time, no, you're going to regret it instantly. Now, here's the secret I'm talking about that a lot of drivers don't know, in particular Uber and Bolt drivers. Uber cannot raise, well, they can raise their fares, but they cannot increase the amount of money they're paying their drivers. I know that for a fact because they have an agreement with TfL, which would mean that they can't overpay drivers, because if they do overpay drivers, then what's going to happen to all the bus drivers and other people who drive for a living? Why would you drive a bus for 12 to 15 pounds an hour when you could just come to Uber and make 20 to 30 pounds? Do you understand? So they have an agreement with TfL that, you know, the amount of money they pay Uber drivers is actually capped, and that won't go any higher. A lot of people don't know this. But this is a fact. So for all the Uber drivers thinking, oh, well, you know, Uber can see they're losing drivers, so eventually they'll come to their senses and pay drivers more. No, you're wrong. It's never going to happen because they're not allowed. I promise you, they are not allowed to pay drivers more. Because if they do, a lot of the bus drivers, why would you drive a bus when you can make double the money doing Uber, right? So do you see where I'm coming with this? So I will say this, if you are thinking of doing Uber, yes, do it, but make sure you're not doing it full time. You have to do it as a side gig. If you throw all your eggs into this one Uber basket, I can almost be certain that you will regret this. So that's what I would say on that matter. Now to the sweet part, how much can a person actually make driving for Bolt and Uber? And by the way, this is not a question that just has a simple answer like, all right, mate, you can make this amount and that amount. No. So I'm going to break it down like this. Your earning is going to depend on what vehicle you drive, what area you live in, and what trips you accept, of course, right? Now, experienced drivers, people who've driven for Uber for several years, experienced drivers can expect to make around, I would say probably around 20 to 30 pounds an hour. That's experienced drivers. And I say this during peak hours, right? You know, the peak hours is only from 5 a.m. to about 10 a.m. and then it picks up in the afternoon, 3 p.m. to about 8 p.m. Those are the peak hours. So experienced drivers can expect to make 20 to 30 pounds. Newbies, drivers who don't really know what they're doing, they've just started, you can expect to make anything from 15 to 20 pounds an hour. Now, I know what you're going to be thinking, well, you know, I've driven all my life. I class myself to be experienced. Wrong. Uber's a whole complete different word, because you could get a trip on paper that looks like an excellent trip, but in reality, it's probably the worst trip you could have done that day. But you will only learn this after you've done the job for several months to a year. So this is why I say experienced drivers and inexperienced drivers, right? And a massive shout out to bluefreelancer.com for being today's sponsor for this video. And by the way, guys, if you found this video somewhat useful, do hit that subscribe button to help the channel grow. And best of luck with your driving career, man. I wish you guys all nothing but success. Peace.